last week when we finished, Misty just said, what's the topic for next week? And off the top of my head, I just said, uncover, discover.
Recording in progress.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Are we having
Okay, go for
difficulties?
it. Go for it. You're good.
No,
You're good.
no.
Okay, so at the end of last week, Zoom or during it or sometime, Misty said, what are you going to talk about next week? So I just off the top of my head said, oh, let's talk about uncover, discover, and discard. I love that. And so it's uncover, discover, and discard. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. And, you know, it comes out of step 6, you know, what can I say? I love the 12 steps. They work when nothing else does. Marches you up face to face with the God of your understanding. And so I'm never very, very far from the 12 steps. So I got to thinking about uncover, discover, and discard. You know, that, like I said, it comes out of step 6 and 7. Those 2 steps are right slab dab in the middle, right in the middle of the 12. Oh my goodness, there's Marcel. Well, we ought to just have him do this. He could do this. But anyway, we've got us some seasoned people on here this morning. Good for y'all. But anyway, step 6 and 7 is slap dab right in the middle of the 12. And that is really where the recovery begins. And, you know, it begins really in step 3 when we make a decision that we want to go toward recovery. But anyway, you know, step 6 says we were entirely ready to have these character defects, to have God remove all of these character defects. And so, you know, I got to thinking about negative thinking. You know, we can be in good recovery, we can work the steps, we can go to meetings, we can have sponsors, we can do you know, those 5 things. There's my friend Joseph, and, you know, we can do all the things that we're taught to do in recovery. And guess what? And there's Bonnie, and there's Suzanne. I've got to stop myself. I do have ADD, I'm sorry. But anyway, it is, you know, we can do all those things that we're taught to recover, and we can stay in, you know, away from a substance. We can, you know, stay dry from alcohol. We can stay on a food plan with our eating disorder. We can stop the sexual acting out, all of that, you know, get a balance in everything, and still have negative thinking. You know, I have gone with, and I'm not criticizing anyone, I'm just making a point. You know, I've been around the rooms for a long time, and there's old timers around there that we used to call them being sick, sober, and AA. You know, they were dry, they wasn't drinking, but they really didn't have an example of anything that I would want to be when I grew up. You know, they would be half the time mad at the newcomers for making too much noise or this or that or something else. And so I got to thinking, you know, that this is what we have to, I believe, as recovering people, that we have to guard against at all times, and that is our negative thinking. And we get bombarded from, you know, used to, they said that it took 6 times the positive to overcome 1 negative. It's much, much greater than that, because we're bombarded from every side today of negative thinking, particularly if you turn on that idiot box called the TV. I have not seen a news, I mean, you know, I do read the newspaper, but, you know, I kind of get on over there too. There's a column that a minister writes. I read his column, I read their Abbey, and I read the funny paper. And you know, a lot of the newspaper I don't always read, because it's pretty negative, and I like to keep up with what's going on. But still, what I want to talk about is negative thinking equals negative action, which equals unhappiness and despair. And if you're in a 12-step program and you're in recovery from an addiction, oh my goodness, you ought to be the happiest person in the world to have had that mental obsession, that desire to use, removed from your brain and your, physical and mental body. And if you're new in the program and that hadn't happened yet, you wait around. You do the things that your sponsor is telling you, you work the steps, and one day, when you least expect it, that mental obsession for the addiction will be removed. And with all of that, and I guess I'm talking as much to old timers as anyone, we can get into that negative thinking and, doom and gloom, and what that, equals then is unhappiness and despair. Woe is me, and so this past year, during the pandemic, there was a lot of negativity. And if you turn on the TV and the government, blah, 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 there can be a lot of negativity. But we have a program to live by that teaches us to a way to live in positive thinking. And that is through finding a God of our understanding. And many of you on this screen, I know, believes in Jesus Christ is your Savior, and I do. But there's other way. I'm not going to get into religion, but the 12 steps, what it will do is march you up face to face with the God of your understanding. There's no failure to it. And that's where the recovery comes from. And so, what happens in steps 6 and 7, guess what? We have to grow up. It moves us from being a child and living childlike, and then moving from that into adolescence. Now, if you want to be negative and have negative thinking, you stay in that adolescent brain. An adolescent, think about an adolescent. They get mad at their parents, they get mad at society, they don't like what's going on in the world or whatever. An adolescent, it's about immaturity, and they're in that in-between stages. And that's what happens to 12-steppers, people in the program, if we don't grow and move through the program and learn about our character defects. Now, if we don't see our character defects, they will slap us in the face. So, step 1, we figure out what the problem is. 2 is absolutely the solution. There is no other solution that I believe other than a spiritual solution. And then 3, we make a decision which way we want to go. Do you want to live in the problem, or do you want to go toward the solution? And then step 4, if you decide that you want this way of life, then we immediately go into a step 4, an inventory. We take an inventory of ourselves. Now, we just get to see, we write it down. If we're honest, we put down everything. And it's not about looking at just the bad stuff. Addicts, we can put ourselves down, how bad, awful, and wrong we are. It's hard for us sometimes to look at the good stuff. So that's what a good 4th step is to see the stock in trade. And then you give it to a sponsor or a spiritual director, someone that understands and this process. And so step 5 is the uncovering step. You're going to uncover what you have written in step 4 with the help of a spiritual guide or a sponsor. They're going to help you see what your character defects are. And sometimes they're not always nice about it. They will point out, help you see what your character defects are. And if we don't see those, we're going to continue to act them out. And we can be clean of a substance and still treat our families bad, our spouses bad, our neighbors bad. But by gosh, we're not drinking, or we're not overeating or starving ourselves, which that is a big plus. But don't we want more? Don't we want more than just being clean of a substance? And what 6 and 7 is teaches us how to grow up and move out of that childlike, and step 5, we, through the help of a sponsor, we begin to uncover what is getting in the way, stopping us from what's getting between us and the God of our understanding. And so a good sponsor will help us see that. And then 6 and 7, we call them little bang bang steps. They're not little, they're huge, but we work them together. But step 6 is, we're entirely ready to have God remove all of our character defects. Oh, I was so ready for God to just zap me well and remove those character defects. I mean, aren't y'all? Don't you like to, to live better, be better, act better, all that? But it works in a partnership with God. I do the footwork and God blesses the effort. I wanted him to just zap me well. I'll tell you, I had a lot of negative thinking that I had to overcome. And then I'd go from negative thinking over back into that adolescent living in a dream world and a fantasy of what life could be like, and not keep my feet planted, in recovery. So we have to learn to, in essence, to grow up. I hate to tell you folks, recovery is about growing up. If you want to stay stuck in adolescence and, stay in maturity, continue on. But the steps is, for me, it was a parenting process. I didn't have much parenting, and it wasn't that my folks were withholding anything. They didn't have good parenting. They didn't know how to pass on, we can't pass on what we don't have. And so what this 12 steps has taught me is how to grow up. And so it's being willing to take the action to move from being childlike and from that adolescent behavior. I know some of you are old timers, some of you are new to the program. I don't know if all of you have sat through, group conscious meetings in the rooms of the fellowship. You can see immaturity show up real fast. Everybody wants their way. You get a bunch of addicts together trying to solve a problem, and it can get loud. But the good news is they stay with those traditions, and they stay with it till they come to a solution. But for a while, the kid and everyone probably in those rooms show up. And then some of them will sit back and really act like a child and sulk and cross their arms and won't say anything. So the point that I'm trying to make is that we must grow up. If you want to grow up and live as an adult, I hated being a kid. I wouldn't go back to being a kid if God said today, you can go back and be a child, a teenager. No, thank you. It wasn't good then. I don't know why it'd be any better now. I love being an adult. I love making my own decisions. So, on these character defects, and I just hate this. I don't like this, but it's the truth. On our character defects, if you want to know what your character defect is, or me, or any of us, you start seeing what you criticize in other people. When you criticize something in other people, if you spot it, you got it. I hate that, don't y'all? I'd just rather tell them what their faults are. But when I start getting critical about other people, and most of the time I keep it to myself, or maybe one other person, I don't go spout it off everywhere. But when I get critical, I know that I need to get back into spirituality, because when I get critical of another person, what I'm seeing is what I don't like in myself. If I couldn't see their character, if I didn't have it in me, I couldn't recognize it in them. So, those are the things that we have to start looking at, is our own character defects, and we see it in others. And like I said, if we didn't have it in us, we couldn't see it in others. So what step 6 holds is the key, the absolutely key to the awareness of who we are and what our character defects are. And if you have a good sponsor, they will help you see them. I remember I've done many fourth and fifth steps, and many of them I did while I was practicing a substance. They recommend that you're sober in all substances. It works better. But anyway, I've done many before I ever found my way into recovery from, substances. But when I did the first inventory after treatment for my eating disorder, I was doing my fifth step with a beloved sponsor and friend that had known me for years. And she also knew about my control and about, and by the grace of God, I believe God has removed a lot of that need to control. So when the need to control is not there, I don't control. So I kept bugging her after I got through. I said, write down how you see my character defects. What is my character defect? What do you say? What do you say? I just bugged her to death. And she did not want to write down anything. And she finally wrote down one word. And we were up in Dallas at a conference in a hotel, and she wrote down one word, and it was procrastination. And I got so mad at her, and I got up and left the room. The reason I got up and left the room is because she was so right. I would put off, if it wasn't for the last minute, I'd never get anything done. And so I pushed myself and pushed myself. So anyway, if you have a good sponsor, they're going to help you see what your character defects are. She could have listed many more, but that was bingo head on, So when we start becoming aware of what our character defects are and how they affect ourselves and others, that's an awareness of God. God will reveal to us our character defects and how it affects other people. Because if we don't see how our behavior affects other people, we're never going to get in recovery. Now, we may be sick, sober in the program, clean, like I said, of a substance, that white knuckle, but recovery is about seeing the good. There's good in the worst of us, and there's a little bad in the best of us. And so, but it's about seeing people, through the eyes of God. Now, we're not God, but if we can see them through the eyes of God and take the focus off of their character defects and put them on our own. So, and another thing, we can't pretend to be something that we're not. We can't. When I first started in the program, and for many years, and even really after I got into the field, I always felt like a fake and a phony. I thought, one of these days they're going to figure out I don't know anything. And I've heard that from many addicts. If any of y'all have ever felt like a fake and a phony, shake your head. Any of you ever felt like a fake and a phony? That we're just, if they ever find out that we really don't know what we're talking about, that, they won't want to have anything to do with us, And so for me, what I had to learn to do is to accept myself exactly the way I am. We're told and we learn how to love others, but if we can't learn to love ourselves, our warts and all, how are we going to learn to love other people? I don't think we can. And it starts with, I believe, accepting that God loves us, And when, you've heard all this, when we put ourselves down, we're putting down God's handiwork. And I put down God's handiwork a lot in myself. And then I would look out there and criticize everyone else. So, there's a set of spiritual principles that we're taught to live by. And for addicts, this is my belief. I believe we must live by these spiritual principles, or we will use again. I think it is, if we don't live a little different, it doesn't mean we're better than anyone, but I'll just speak for myself. If I don't seek God's help every day and live none of us are going to do it perfect, but to live by spiritual principles, I believe I will get back into every addiction I've ever had. Because by myself, I'm nothing. I can't do it by myself. I need people like you. God lives and works through people. And so the thing about these spiritual principles, this is simple. And I've got some old timers here that this is absolutely kindergarten for y'all. But, one of the principles of spiritual principles is in working the program and doing it on a daily basis, because that's all we get. We get a daily reprieve based on being in fit spiritual condition. So one thing is how we can stay in fit spiritual condition. One thing is to just be willing, to do something someone else's way, and also be willing to accept ourselves exactly the way we are. When we can do that, we can accept other people. And then another thing is make a commitment. I work with people all the time when they're in treatment or when they're early in the program. Oh, they're so committed and they want to, do this way of life for the rest of their life. Doesn't work like that. You can't do it for the rest of your life. We do it today. That's all any of us have. Thank God we don't have to do all this forever. We do it today. And then, we wake up in the morning, we ask God, give me a day of abstinence. Put someone in my life today that I might be of service to. Keep those prayers simple. God knows, so we don't have to give him a long prayer. Just simple. Get on our knees. Thank God. Invite him into the day. Ask him to help us to be, clean and clear and absent of any substance, and to help us to be willing to help someone else and to put someone in our life that we might be of service to. And then get up off your knees and, off of my rear end and, go about our days. And sometimes those people that we need, I used to think it was just going to be people who showed up in 12-step meetings that I needed to be of service to. No. Anyone you come in contact with, in the grocery store, Walmart, in the streets, people are hurting. And it's real easy to ignore, it's easy to love the lovable. It's real easy to ignore the unlovable. And, my friend Misty and I just came back from Alexandria, Louisiana. I was invited to go down and speak to a large gathering. People, it's called POA, Pentecost. It wasn't the church, it was a group of addicts that they have formed, a new form of group. It's called Seven. And I'll tell you, they say contempt prior to investigation. The big book talks about that. So I was down there last year, and I went to that meeting. And I will tell you, I'm such a big book thumper and 12-stepper. I got critical. I had some criticism about that. And so when they invited me to come back and share in that group, what I had to do is to really pray about it and have an openness. Well, I'll tell you, I sat in there for 2 days and I watched those people in that Seven group. And I'm not going to tell you what it is, but there's a man on here, Marcel, if any of y'all would like to know about that Seven group, I'll tell you, I am so fired up. We're going to have Marcel and his group to come out here to Abilene, Texas. And I don't know when it's going to be. And I've got cold chills thinking about it. And when I have cold chills about something, I believe that's God speaking through me or to me or something. But anyway, so one of the things I like about myself is I can change my mind. And God changed my mind about that group. I was there and I'm not going to tell you all about it because I would water it down, and you need to hear it from someone like Marcel, who has been long-term recovery at Alcoholics Anonymous. So on Saturday night, there was 8 people who were celebrating birthdays. That's a lot of folks, people. There's a lot of recovery in those rooms. And I guess I caught it. I caught the magic. I caught the enthusiasm. And so stay tuned. I'll be talking more about it, but I'm not until we bring Marcel and his group out to Abilene to help us form a group here. So with that, I'm going to end that. But on our way back, talking about seeing unlovely people. We had stopped in Waco on our way back and went to that Magnolia thing that, you know, is a big, it's nice, but now it's just a tourist attraction. But we got out the parking lot, and here's this woman that walked up to us that started talking. You know, I make up that she might have had a little bit of maybe mental illness. I don't know. But she started talking about her kids and needing a job and wanting to take care of her kids and blah, blah, blah. Bottom line, she wanted some money. And so we scrounged around and found some money and gave it to her. And then I had to stop in myself in the midst of that and think, that's God's kid, that's God's child. I do not need to criticize that person at all. You know, what I said out loud, and I'm not proud of this, you know, I told Misty, I said, well, if she was that hard up, how could she afford a smartphone? She was holding a smartphone. But see, that's my criticizing. I don't know that woman. I don't know anything about it. But anyway, those are the people that we have to pay close attention to. When God puts people in our lives on a daily basis, is to let them somehow see, be willing to show a commitment, or to let them see God somehow in us. And so back to the number 2 is that commitment. Commit to ourselves and to others that we want to live this way of life. And that 6 and 7 is seeing our character defects and being willing to not to continue to live out of. You know, you get on your knees and ask God to remove those character defects in step 7. Find out what they are in 4, 5, 6, and then you get on your knees and ask God to remove them. And I believe this. I know God can magically remove, not magically, but spiritually remove any character defect that we have. But I have to do my part. Get up off my knees and go to work and be aware of my character defects and be willing not to act them out. Now, I'm not perfect, and when we slip up, we ask for forgiveness. So it's about commitment to ourselves and then commitment to others. Commitment to ourselves, to God, and others. And then be aware. Awareness is the third thing. Just be aware of ourselves. How do we, do we spend a lot of time in negativity? Do you? Do I? And be aware of it, and then watch how we see the negativity in others. And remember that our addictions are but a symptom of our disease. And we have to get down to the causes and conditions, and we only have a daily reprieve, like I said a while ago. We can't do this, we can't recover for 5 years from now. Those people that were celebrated Saturday night, I think they figured out there was like 33, 34 years represented all total.
35.
35. Missy said 35 years. Those people didn't do that a year at a time. They did it 1 day at a time, 1 heartbeat at a time, 1 minute at a time. It is, when we do that, when we're giving up a substance, we can't do it forever. We have to do this minute, this moment, and then another moment, and then another moment, and then a minute, and then an hour. And then those minutes and hours turn into days, and those days turn into months, and months turn into years. And so, but bottom line, we only get a daily reprieve, and it's contingent on staying in fit spiritual condition. So, this is just a reminder that the problem, if you want to know what your problem is, if I want to know what my problem is, it's between my 2 ears. It's in my thinking, and that's what we have to guard against at all times. And, and thinking about, as long as we have that negative thinking, it will absolutely destroy any thought of attaining any joy, peace, or happiness. Do any of y'all want joy and peace and happiness? I'll tell you, we can't have it if we live in that negative thinking. That always doom and gloom. What's going to happen next? When's the next shoe going to fall? So, like I keep saying, we get a daily reprieve based on being in fit spiritual condition. And then this scripture is, to thine own self be true. Thy own self. We've got to do some soul searching every day and see what our character defects are, and like I said, we're not talking about perfection, we're talking about, we strive for perfection and we settle for progress. And so it sounds like I've kind of, and I do this toward the end of every talk, I kind of, go to preaching instead of sharing, and I feel like I need to, have an altar call and pass the basket, the offering plate, and, and I don't mean to preach, but, I look for a way to live all of my life, and I went from church to church to church to church, and I never heard what I heard when I walked into my first 12-step meeting. It was different, because they accepted me exactly the way that I was. And I'm sure those people in church did. I just couldn't take the acceptance. I couldn't, because what I thought, if they only knew what was happening in my house, if they only knew what I was doing with the substance, if they only knew, they wouldn't let me in the door of the church. And what I found in a 12-step program is love, acceptance, and unconditional positive regard. And hopefully that's what each of us can have for ourselves today, and going into this holiday season, which the 4th of July, that's freedom, folks. Let's celebrate our freedom. With freedom there comes cost, and we have to give up some things in order to have freedom. But I will tell you, it's worth the price of the ticket. So I don't know if you've gotten anything out of this, but when I thought of the topic last week, it was uncover, discover, and discard. And it just came off the top of my head. And that's really the essence of what the 12-step program is uncover. We uncover all that bad stuff, and we see what's good and what's not good. We uncover, and then we discover not only the character defects, but we discover the good stuff in our lives. And then the next thing is to discard what doesn't work. And that's why it's not a one and done deal. We continue. And Marcel, I hope he'll talk. I'm just wondering, and I'm not putting him on the spot, I just wonder how many 4th and 5th steps he's done. I see Jackie up there. How many has she done? I see Bonnie. I see some long-term people here. And I don't think the steps are one and done. It's a living program daily. So with that, I'm going to pass to y'all. I hope you will share and talk. I will tell you, if you're early in the program and you haven't found that freedom from the hold that an addiction has on you, you keep doing the things that you're told through sponsorship and through leadership and through the big book and the Bible, you keep doing those things, I will make you an absolute guarantee that mental obsession for any addiction will be removed in God's timetable. Okay, so who wants to talk? If he doesn't talk, I'm going to call on him.